Let's welcome Vivian Nixon and Dominique Morgan.
Hi, Dominique. How are you?
I'm good, Miss Vivian. How are you?
I'm really good. I'm excited and a little awed to be celebrating 20th anniversary of College and Community Fellowship. And I've been involved with the organization for 19 of those 20 years. And for 16, I've been executive director. And when I thought about who I would want to have a conversation with during this celebration, a lot of people came to mind. I've met some amazing people in doing this work. But deep impressions are not as many. And you are one of the people who has made a deep impression on me because it helped me learn something. Watching the work of Black and Pink and how you have elevated it, made people think deeply about who we're excluding when we talk about the need for a complete transformation of the way we do justice in America, all the way from policing to prosecution to sentencing, the ways people are treated in correctional facilities to the extent that they exist at this time. We have not elevated some of the people who are most harmed by those processes. And you brought that to my attention. CCF believes in community. We believed in trauma-informed service delivery. And I know that the work of Black and Pink is very rooted in community and very rooted in trauma. I'd like you to just talk to me a little bit about how you came to Black and Pink, how you mustered up what I think is a tremendous amount of courage to approach the work the way that I see you approaching it, without fear, without reservation, without holding back the truth, because I want to model that in my work.
Well, thank you for saying that. I think I was thinking about a lot when you were speaking. 20 years ago, I was entering the prison system. I was 18. This time in the year 2000, I was in a county jail in Lincoln, Nebraska. And I was up against about 30 felony charges. Ended up being sentenced to 8 to 16 years in Nebraska's adult system after coming up through the youth system. 15 years ago, Black and Pink was established by Jason Leiden in Boston, Massachusetts. And then I always think about where I was at, okay, 2005. Well, I was in a supermax prison fighting to finish my culinary degree in one of the last college programs that they had. And the requirement was for me to work in the kitchen and then go to school at night. So I was the lead kitchen chef. I was working about 12 hours a day, and I was making, at the most, I made $3.78 a day. Mm. But my father always said to me, he used to say, if you can either take care of the sick or if you can feed people, you're always gonna be okay. And so I was like, well, blood and that thing isn't my ministry, so I better learn how to cook and feed people. And because really this is kind of the zenith of what I'm gonna be accomplished based on what I've experienced. And so I fought for that associate's degree in culinary management. I fought hard for it. And I remember being very grateful for the opportunity to learn. You asked me, like, where does my approach come from? I think it's because I've kept that desire to learn in me, because I always quote things from my family. My granddaddy, his favorite line was from Arkansas. And I would be like, Granddaddy, I can't wait for spring to come. I can't wait for summer to come. And Granddaddy's his, baby, live on. That was his answer. Anytime I anticipated something or I wanted something to go faster than it could, he would just, essentially strap in and just enjoy the ride. I tried to engage in that, but I really try to keep my eyes, my ears, my heart as open as possible, because every person that has come in my life has taught me something. And sometimes they're teaching me who I don't want to be. Mm. I reached a point last December where I stopped referring to my incarceration as time I lost, because I refused to give them that that narrative around a huge part of my story. No, that was just a time where my learning process wasn't on the campuses that the other kids that I graduated with. We weren't having the same spaces of education, but I was still learning. I was figuring out people and what made people tick and how to have community. I learned to have community on a prison yard of, I'm making the most out of all of my sisters. And there was a group of trans girls in the yard. I'm making the most out of all of us. I'm making $102 a month after taxes. And there's 5 of us and we have to eat. And because of the Prison Rape Elimination Act, PREA, my other sisters can't get jobs outside of the unit. So we poured in. If I eat, you eat. It was just, it's been, and so it's been that. It's been being around the Susan Burtons and watching someone take every bit of lived experience and turn it into opportunity for someone else. And at Black and Pink, I will say that Black and Pink has probably benefited me more than I've ever benefited Black and Pink. I detransitioned when I came out of prison. I was released from prison February 16th of 2009. I looked around the world and I didn't see anything that told me that a Black trans woman could be successful or be anything that anybody cared about. And after all that I had went through inside, after losing both of my parents, adopting my youngest sister about 6 months after prison, I just wanted people to see me as valuable, even if I couldn't see it myself. And so I spent the next 11 years going to college, getting these degrees, doing these things, getting these titles. And I got in this job here, and due to Black women like yourself, due to Black women like Susan Burton, and these incredible folks I've been able to connect to in this justice space, it's something about seeing someone use power in a way that they don't have any fear that teaches you not to have fear. You know what I'm saying? I don't know if I'm a huge PBS fan and watching the people make ice sculptures with the fire. That's what it's like watching you all every day do your work. It's like watching someone take something that you don't even understand how they are turning it into something so beautiful. But you also are watching them wield something that has to be scary for them and would be scary for anyone else. But they put it together and they make something magical. And so I put that into my work at Black and Pink. I started to put it into my life. I started down my road of transitioning again in March of this year, 4 days after my birthday. We opened Lighten House on February 16th of this year, on the 11-year anniversary of me being released from prison. So all of those things come into kind of my gumbo of my work. But what I can say without question that is the main ingredient is that Black women have poured into me before I knew what pouring into someone was. And that to be in a world where I am in the ranks of women like you, women like Susan Burton, makes me sometimes emotional to the point where I can't really handle it, because it makes me really look at who I am. If people say my name in the same sentence as you all, I sometimes have to challenge how much of the work I need to do on myself still to see me holy. And then I pivot that back to Black and Pink. So it's a mixture of a lot of things, but it's really about being open and understanding that I am put here to learn. And if I'm open to learning, I hope the universe positions me to be able to apply what I've learned, not just for myself, but to change and amplify my community.
You know, it just hearing you talk like this just brings so much to my attention that's so real and that people would never believe. So you're watching us, me, Susan, Deanna Hoskins, so many other powerful women out there doing this work, and thinking, wow, how do I make magic like that? How do I build that ice sculpture? Not knowing that we're looking at you thinking the same thing. Because each of us has that place of vulnerability, right? That is uniquely ours from our experience, our lived trauma, our lived damaged from being under the weight of oppression, many different oppressions. I was thinking last night, if I count all the different systems I'm involved in where I am under the weight of oppression or considered less than. I'm less than because I'm Black, because or considered. I don't think I'm less than, but the world treats me as I'm less than because I'm a woman, because I'm Black, because I'm overweight, because I have a physical disability, because I have a criminal record. I mean, the list goes on. And I'm like, how have I survived? Like, how do you survive under that much weight? Right? And then I look at you, and I know what the data says about how trans women are so likely to be subject to all the things that we are now fighting in the streets about. Police brutality, severe abuse within prison systems, job discrimination, discrimination in educational institutions, just this life of erasure, that because you don't fit into a mold, you don't matter. No one does it with ease. This is what I can say without question. If someone is telling you that they're doing this work with ease, and that there are not nights when they are in tears, when they are not torn apart, when it seems like no matter how hard they try, someone has a problem with it, can't please everybody, then they're not telling you the truth. So what I'm hoping is that, by example, people like you, people like me, like Deanna, like Susan, like Hamdia, who is this sweet servant leader, can show other women that your leadership is not diminished by your vulnerability. Your vulnerability is part of your strength. And when I see you being vulnerable, it allows me to be vulnerable.
I think that vulnerability piece is essential to how we build community. I don't think you can make those connections that create transformational experiences and you have those walls up. And that's, I've tried. I would say that, in prison, those were my sisters and I love those girls dearly, but the system had trained me to only let people in so much. Mm-hmm. And then to have those sort of connections to women I've never been in the same space with before. And because of how I allow myself to be open, the relationship feels that transformational, right? It's like there's a switch that happens. And you're right, Miss Vivian, it also is scary because it means that the possibility for you to experience hurt or harm is higher. I think as folks who, between the data, between the people around us, between what our mamas and our grandmamas told us, we know that we're going to experience harm. We kind of just be like, I'd rather try than not try at all. And that's not, and I don't think that's being, throwing care to the wind. I think that's saying that I would rather gamble on my people than not step up to the table at all. I think that's what my work is every day. I don't 100% think that everything that I attempt to do is going to be perfect. I don't want it to be perfect. I have this huge fear of people seeing me as kind of like a North Star, because I'm like, listen, there are days that my light is not given that. and I don't want to do that. Not only because I feel like everyone should be their own North Star. I think your dreams, your spirit should lead you. But also that doesn't allow me to be my own North Star. I feel like I have to be that for everyone else. Mm-hmm. So that vulnerability for me is something that I don't want to lose. I actually spend a lot of time in therapy talking about how I maintain it. Mm-hmm. Because, that'll be like, oh, if I could just cut off this part, I could move like this. I could do the work like this. It'll be so simple. And as you said before, Ms. Vivian, if it's simple, it's not authentic. And if it's not authentic, it's not impactful. And if it's not impactful, I don't want to be involved in it.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. we're in really tumultuous times, right? Seems like the world is going crazy. Pandemic, you've got unrest, you've got an awakening. People say that we're in a period of reckoning. No, reckoning is when you're actually correcting the problem. We're in a period of awareness that a reckoning needs to happen with regard to our historical, structural, systemic racism and all other kind of isms that we have allowed to be the undercurrent of how the society runs and operates. And we're hoping that that's about to change. And it has to change really no matter what happens on November 4th, right? We're a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization. We're going to do our work no matter who's in charge.
Amen.
But, depending on who's in charge, our work will look different, right? And we will have to have a level of courage that we may not yet have had to display. And people are going to have our backs. When it comes to being a Black woman, a Black trans woman in this work, we have allies who support our work and who right now are very publicly saying, we want to lift you up. We want to help you. We want to support this work. What is it you think that we could say or do to help them support us better? What are the things that trouble you about our relationship with our allies?
I think the biggest thing that if your desire is allyship and essentially servant leadership, like engagement, really be open to what the folks you want to be in community with are telling you they need. And ask with the intention of following through. Know that you may not have, I think, and we also need to stratify our allyship. Like if you're like, yo, this is how I show up by writing a check or so on and so forth. As a nonprofit leader, child, I'm never gonna poo-poo on a dollar. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I want to know you believe in the values of the work I'm doing. I want to know that I want to know that when I look at how you live the rest of your life, or what events you show up to, or who you uplift, that it doesn't feel like you're tokenizing me with your dollar, that you're tokenizing my work with your dollar. Mm-hmm. And so I think asking what are the needs and being open to meet those needs, and also really challenging yourself in all the ways you can show up. Because we don't get to silo the parts of us that show up. It's all of ourselves in this. And that's what they love, right? Is that we go hard, we give them our full selves. I want them to put as much on the line. Put as much on the line. Show me that this matters to you, because that's, as we look at this awakening and we go into a time of reckoning, as you said so eloquently, we have to do this work in radical ways that we've never done it before. And one of the missing links has been the ways that allies show up and maintain their promise to us and build community with us. So those are things that I'm looking forward to seeing. And I think COVID activated some of that. And I'm excited to see how folks can continue to transform how we change our communities by engaging in community in the first place.
Yeah, I fully agree. And I'm hoping that allies begin to understand that while they may have these very brilliant strategic plans that they do, and may have an idea of how to make change happen, that sometimes change happens in unexpected ways. Yes, and what I want most from our allies is to trust us, to trust that an investment in us is an investment in progress that may not look exactly like the way your theoretical theory of change looks in your strategic plan. But an investment in us is definitely an investment in positive change. And, when you look at Silicon Valley, folks in Silicon Valley are allowed to fail. People invest in them all the time, and a venture may fail, and then they'll start another venture. Give us room to breathe and room to fail. And then here's the thing that has gotten to me over these 20 years. Don't punish us when we succeed. Yes. Don't say, oh, well, you're so successful now, you don't need us anymore. I beg to differ. The more successful I am, the more I need allies. Indeed. And I'm glad that we're allies. We need our brothers who are in this work to be our allies. We need people who look like us to be allies and people who don't look like us to be allies. I learned through this training I went through, that's a communications training, there is a percentage of the population you're never going to get. They're never going to really embrace your vision, your direction, your need to be seen as completely part of this society, but also be valued for how different you are. It's like the erasure of the color line is not my goal.
Yes.
I don't want color blindness. Please recognize my Blackness.
Yes, indeed.
I love it. There's something about it that I would never want to give up. So I'm not asking for a colorblind society. I'm asking for a society where we all appreciate who we are for who we are. So as we move forward in this work for the next 20 years, I mean, somebody will be doing it. Hopefully I'll be knitting or something.
You got a book of poetry to work on. You got to, I want this book on my desk.
That's right, finishing my book of poems and my memoir. Hopefully as we move forward, we can imagine a world where incarceration is just not the normal thing, where when people break the rules of our society, and they will, that there's other ways to hold them accountable in community, to give victims the healing that they need, but also recognize that the person who committed a crime, I can almost without doubt say there's healing needed there as well. What do you think are the major things? Give me two major things that need to happen before we get to that place. There's a lot of talk about abolitionist movements, defunding the police. All of that is the goal, but what are the steps to get there?
I think we have to start being comfortable and make it the norm to create any initiative centered around the most oppressed population in which you want to make sure that you're serving. Because if you are centering whatever you're creating about around the most oppressed population, everyone else is inherently going to benefit from it. So as you mentioned many times, if we're looking at, I tell folks, I look at the First Step Act as something that's beautiful, but I've yet to see a Black trans woman walk outside of a prison with that pomp and circumstance. And you can't tell me that those folks could not be impacted by this. Why? Because it wasn't centered around them. They weren't at the forefront of the thought. Mm-hmm. And so folks who are absolutely on the spectrum of oppression, but need to recognize where they're at on the spectrum, we need to feel comfortable centering those populations, in my opinion. And then the other thing is that we have to recognize that a singular experience around liberation is like a gallon of milk that only lasts a couple of weeks in the refrigerator. Stop letting a singular experience of liberation be our finish line. I'm not saying a singular need for liberation is wrong. I'm saying that should be your first step, because I believe you can't do a community definition of liberation if you haven't had a taste of what it looks like for you. But stop letting that be our finish line, because that's what they bank on. I will give this much to this one, it will shut this one up, and then they can be used to shut other people up. Oh, not all of us don't have. I have. Well, girl, it's 15 of y'all and it's 15 million of us out here. So what's it giving? Stop thinking that one of us having it is enough. I live a life where I don't even allow myself to enjoy something if the people I love the most don't have it. It was about a year ago. I bought an Apple Watch for me and a friend, and a few other friends in our circles didn't have one. And I remember just throughout the year, birthdays and holidays, I bought them all a watch, because I wanted us all to be there. And it seems for some people it's awkward, but I don't really feel comfortable enjoying something in a way where I feel like everyone around me can't explain what it tastes like. So I think those two things can be huge activators to the sort of transformation that we want to see happen.
Yes, that African concept of Ubuntu, right?
Yes.
I am you, you are me. We are together one thing. And if we can feel that way about one another, our communities will change. The last thing I wanted to bring up, the last conversation we had we did a live panel, which I loved the other week. That was a lot of fun. We talked about education and the various ways that education can be empowering, but that there's also, there's discrimination and suppression within the educational structures because education is based in ideology that's rampant with white supremacy, right? And that is changing, and it's changing more and more, so that our history and our representations are more evident in the academy. But what part does education play in a person's ability to lead in a movement for change that is as necessary and timely as this movement to get rid of white supremacy, to get rid of systemic oppression in our justice system?
I believe that on that amazing panel, it was maybe Terrell that brought up first, doing the work to affirm all sorts of education is valid, right? From grandma's knee to your PhD program. I think that's important. But Miriam Kaba talks about this idea of you have to stratify what your educational scope looks like. And I think we started this conversation because folks were saying these initiatives around education feel reformist and they're not abolition based. I say to folks all the time, okay, let's say you want to blow up the building. You better have an engineer in your team if you want to burn it all down and you really want it to come down. Because honey, you walk to the corner of a brick building and just light a fire, there's no guarantee it's coming down, sis. Right? So you have your understanding and you need to expand it. I don't believe that we can undo this. These are Dominique's opinions. I don't believe that I can undo the structures that have been placed on me and not get an inside view of what they know. One of the biggest things I would tell folks when they walk into the prison, learn that rule book front to back, because that's what they use. If this is what they use to oppress us, you'll be able to recite it back to them, because then you can either defend yourself or you can disarm them in a way where they won't even try it. For me, it's the same out here in this world. I walk into so many rooms and I know that I have to pull that tool out of my kid. Mm-hmm. And what I can say is that the more that we create spaces in these institutions, these educational institutions, that really support this what we're saying, that our people can be there and they can thrive there, I think we're going to see a huge shift. I also think we have to stop believing that education isn't for us, that education is like the tool of the white man or what have you. We have, our foundation of Blackness is on this idea that we are learned and we are inspirational and looking at the stars and figuring out how to make things and create things. It may not have been on paper, but our brilliance has always been there. And so stop believing that there's a betrayal to our community, a betrayal to our Blackness by wanting to know more in a world where sometimes the way to know more is to go through those spaces. And so a organization like yours allows people who desperately want that to have it. And for me, that's abolition at its core. They see that as a tool for their liberation. Systems of oppression are attempting to prevent them from having that tool for their liberation. And you, a Black woman, said, well, I'm gonna come up with the answer to make sure they get that tool because they want it. Not because I'm telling them they have to have it. I'm saying if you want it, no one should tell you you can't have it, or you shouldn't have to lay up at night thinking, how can I possibly get it? If that isn't dismantling, I don't know what is. So I want to salute you, Queen, for being a trailblazer and for being a light for so many of us, and for giving us, for people who have said education is a tool for their liberation, for being someone who has poured into others' liberation every day in your word. Not many people can say that. And so I appreciate you. I am so thankful to be able to hold space with you and to say, you know, I have your phone number saved in my phone. Because without you, without Susan Burton, without Andrea James, there really is no potential for Dominique Morgan to hold the spaces that I'm in and the spaces I hope to be in. So congratulations on 20 years. And I'm excited to see what's next.
Yeah, me too. I'm excited to see what's next for Dominique Morgan. I'm excited to see us elevate more and more the need to work with our trans sisters in this movement and to make sure that they are safe wherever they are, whatever they're doing, and to just elevate the violence that is perpetrated against trans women of color just because of who they are and for no other reason. And help us, please, be partners in that work to the extent that we need to be and to be better at it. We're here for you.
Well, thank you. And I'm so glad to be in community with you and all of these incredible Black folks and change makers who have stepped up and held hands and sat shoulder to shoulder with me. It brings me a lot of peace. That idea that I'm alone in it slowly continues to evaporate. And it's because of how y'all continue to show up. So thank you. And it means so much.